The family dog had to act quickly to save the baby's life when a house caught fire accidentally. What occurred next is extremely startling. Dawn and Stuart were a couple like any other. They had several hobbies and passions that made them the ideal fit. One of their shared love was animals, particularly dogs. Because of this, not long after they began living together, they acquired a dog that they named Beanie, a large boxer. Beanie may have begun small, but it quickly grew and developed into a very well-built and strong dog. In reality, he was the softest and most loving dog Stuart and Dawn could have ever hoped for. Beanie became the first member of what to be their new family. But he wouldn't be the last. In the middle of March of that year, Dawn learned that she was pregnant. She and Stuart hadn't planned to have children, but they were delighted by the news and couldn't wait to give Beanie a friend to grow up with. The pregnancy went without a hitch, and in January of the following year, she gave birth to a happy and a healthy baby boy, whom they named Mason. Throughout the year, Mason developed quickly and was soon sitting up, crawling, and trying to walk, and Beanie was his best friend and sidekick. In fact, the two never parted. Their friendship was cute and adorable. Stuart and Dawn proved to be great, loving, and wise parents who would do anything for their little baby boy. Less than a year later, it was Mason's first Christmas, and Stuart and Dawn wanted to make it special. They would spend the day together as a family, opening gifts, playing games, and eating food. Sure, Mason may still have been too young to appreciate it all fully, but it also kept the boy from certain death. Dawn had purchased a Santa costume for Health and Beanie online, but it was still a special day and a magical moment that would endure in Stuart and Dawn's memory for the rest of their lives. The number of gifts that people had purchased for Mason was actually absurd, but nobody could dispute that it was a wonderful day. Beanie played with the wrapping paper, sending it flying in all directions as his family watched and laughed. When they all got hungry, they all sat down to a delicious homemade turkey dinner, which was finished off with a champagne for Stuart and Dawn, fruit juice for Mason, and a refreshing bowl of water for Beanie, who had long since shed the Santa suit. After dinner, Stuart picked up Mason and put him in the bed. It had been a long, busy, and exciting day for the young child, and at less than a year old, he would have no doubt been exhausted, so it was no surprise that Mason would sound asleep before Stuart even entered the bedroom. His father had opened the window a little to let the stuffy air out and put the baby inside his cart. Beanie entered the room as Stuart was leaving and jumped onto the bedside table and onto Mason's tiny bed. He curled up at Mason's feet and dozed off as well. Stuart grinned and went out of the room, leaving the door slightly ajar in case the dog tried to escape. Stuart informed his wife that he was heading to his brother's place to drop off a few gifts after helping Dawn clean up the downstairs, the other side of the city. When Dawn kissed him goodbye and told him it wouldn't be long, she sat down on the couch in front of the TV and soon fell asleep. She was unaware that a disaster was about to strike, or that we're unaware that one of the hobs on the oven were still on. A piece of clothing had fallen onto the hob, had begun to smoke before catching fire. Within a short period of time, the fire had spread, and much of the kitchen was engulfed in flames. The fire spread quickly because there was a lot of wrapping paper and other flammable materials throughout the house, and it basically burned like a tinderbox. Smoke began to billow in the front room where Dawn was sleeping, and the thick black curtains soon roused her. Immediately she panicked and realized that Mason was upstairs in his cot. The intense fire had taken over the bottom of the stairs, making it impossible for her to pass through, so she jumped up and ran away from the house, shielding her nose and mouth from the smoke as she did so. Dawn was terrified about whether Mason was still alive. However, she was unaware that he acted immediately as soon as the dog smelled the smoke. Beanie shut the bedroom door to try to stop the smoke from entering the space. He then leapt up the window and shoved his head into a small gap, opening it wide. Lucky for him, there was a roof not far below the window, and beyond that were soft bushes that he could jump into. After taking a deep breath of cool night air, Beanie turned around and sprinted back over to Mason's cart. He grabbed the infant by the scruff of his pajamas, lifting him with all of his strength and slowly carrying him across the room. Both Mason and Beanie suffered a few cuts and bruises, but their minor wounds were preferable to staying in the house and facing the fire from the front. In just a few moments, The raging flames outside the bedroom door would burn through and set all the plastic toys on fire. So Beanie lifted the crying baby and kept a hold of him as he climbed out of the window and lowered himself to the bushes below, while carrying Mason away from the fire and along the garden. The protecting dog, who could hear Dawn's frantic screams, did something stunning and unexpected. He continued to carry the weeping infant in his jaws. Why had he done such a thing? Well, it was quite a cunning move on the dog's side to stroll onto the middle of the road with him and lay him down just where automobiles would come crashing past. It was a risky plan, but Beanie instinctively knew he had to save Mason. And as if it had been planned, the sound of a distant fire truck quickly approached until it roared into view. You see, he knew that the fire engine would come from that direction, and when it came, it would see him and the baby in the road and stop and help them. Mason was crying, and Beanie was pacing around, hoping the fire truck would see them in the road. Thankfully it did, and it screeched to a halt. 2 firefighters jumped out of the camp to help the dog and the baby, while the rest of the crew ran inside to tackle the fire. Fortunately, aside from minor injuries sustained during the escape, everyone was saved. Mason and Beanie were both in perfect health. The relief on their faces when they saw their son was heartwarming. The firefighter carried the young boy around the side of the flaming house to his hysterical mother, Dawn, who was beside herself in fear that her baby boy was trapped in the house, as was Stewart, who had sped back as soon as he heard what was going on. The family would never be able to repay the dog for saving Mason's life, but Beanie didn't mind. He was just happy that his family was happy, making him the best boy. Now it's over to you. What do you think of this incredible story? Have you ever heard of such a heroic dog before? As always, we'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment below.